constraints and by sentence he was taken away. And who of his generation shall declare it? For he was cut off out of the land of the living. For the transgression of my people he was stricken. And he went to the grave with the wicked and with the rich in his death, because he had done no violence, neither was any deceit in his mouth.
Hey, good morning. This is an extra long intro. You know, I'm not even sure why I made that one an intro, because it's got so many mistakes right at the beginning. I should probably trim that off. I have a good recording of it. I don't know why I didn't use that. All right. So we're continuing today in the book of Proverbs, chapter 20. We're going to start at verse 25. We're going to read into chapter 21, maybe the whole chapter, right? Let's see how long it is. Well, maybe not the whole chapter. Well, maybe the whole chapter. I'd say the first 20 verses. Let's just read into it. It's because we like reading the scriptures, even if we're not going to talk about all of them today. It is a snare to the man who devoureth that which is holy, and after vows to make inquiry. A wise king scattereth the wicked, and bringeth the weal over them. The spirit of man is the candle of the Lord, searching all the inward parts of the belly. Mercy and truth preserve the king, and his throne is upholden by mercy. The glory of young men is their strength, and the beauty of old men is the gray head. The blueness of a wound cleanseth away evil, so do stripes the inward parts of the belly. The king's heart is in the hand of the Lord. As the rivers of water, he turneth it whithersoever he will. Every way of a man is right in his own eyes, but the Lord pondereth the hearts. To do justice and judgment is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice. An high look and a proud heart, and the plowing of the wicked is sin. The thoughts of the diligent tend only to plenteousness, but of every one that is hasty, only to want. I guessed at the word hasty because I was literally couldn't quite read it. And that's too funny looking. I don't want to distract you with that. The getting of treasure is the getting of treasures by a lying tongue is a vanity tossed to and fro of them that seek death. The robbery of the wicked shall destroy them, because they refuse to do judgment. Think justice. The way of man is froward and strange, but as for the pure, his work is right. It is better to dwell in a corner of the housetop than with a brawling woman in a wide house. The soul of the wicked desireth evil. His neighbor findeth no favor in his eyes. When the scorner is punished, the simple is made wise. And when the wise is instructed, he receiveth knowledge. The righteous man wisely considereth the house of the wicked, but God overthroweth the wicked for their wickedness. Whoso stoppeth his ears at the cry of the poor, he also shall cry himself, but shall not be heard. A gift in secret pacifieth anger, and a reward in the bosom strong wrath. It is joy to the just to do judgment. I call those J's. It is joy to the just to do judgment, but destruction shall be to the workers of iniquity. The man that wandereth out of the way of understanding shall remain in the congregation of the dead. Interesting formulation. He that loveth pleasure shall be a poor man, and he that loveth wine and oil shall not be rich. The wicked shall be a ransom for the righteous, and the transgressor for the upright. It is better to dwell in the wilderness than with a contentious and an angry woman. There is a treasure to be desired, and oil in the dwelling of the wise, but a foolish man spendeth it up. We're not going to get that far, so we'll just stop there. As we said, that's a lot of Proverbs. To devour what is holy, and afterward to make inquiry. So there's stuff that's often sacred and set aside, like the shewbread, which was for the priests only, right? And as Jesus famously referred to that incident when David did that which is not lawful and took of the shewbread, which was only for the priest, he ate himself, and he gave it himself and also those that were with him. Because, honestly, despite, a lot of times it's tempting to sort of, and people love to do this. They'll want to say, well, he didn't really sin. He didn't really do anything wrong. There's nothing wrong there. Nothing to see here. Because they always want the heroes. I've heard people make apologetics saying what David did with Uriah's wife wasn't a sin. That's funny because David sure thought it was, and Nathan the prophet sure thought it was, and the Lord sure thought it was, and it's written like that. That's the wickedness of men and their loopholes. Getting, using the scriptures by the letter of what's said to pervert justice. So anyways, so we have an idea of someone who devours that which is holy. That word devour feels stronger than like he just ate, right? Is he devoured it, in English anyways, right? So what's the word in Hebrew look like? Let's see. Snare to the man. And again, what does a snare mean? Well, it means you're setting a trap for yourself. And what it is ultimately saying, it's like, it's bad. There's a consequence. The ways in which it is snare-like are not always obvious. It isn't obvious necessarily. Like I could talk about the snare of alcohol, like how it gets you at that good feeling, right? It's like, and then if you think that at first, but then you don't realize as you do more and more of it, that you're becoming physically dependent also. It's not just good feelings you're after. Your body is going to start getting all agitated and irritated. It's easy to see that kind of a snare. And again, and this should be obvious too for those who understand the idea of something truly holy, that which is for God's, which is dedicated to the Lord or for some holy use, it's set aside. And devour, it says devour. Definition, devour. But is devour the same as eat? It comes from a primitive root to blunt or utterly, or utter inconsiderately. Oh, blurt. Whatever, that's what it comes from or whatever? Well, where's the brown driver Biggs? What do they say? Of fall, meaning dubious. Oh. Okay, so they say devour. It's a word that's meaning is notice there's only one occurrence. This is a problem sometimes when you have a word with one occurrence. What do you compare it to? We can compare it to what other translators think it ought to mean. For some people that may be the wrong idea. Like, oh, don't look at the NIV. It's the devil's translation. You said it yourself. Yes. It is a trap to dedicate something rashly and only later consider one's vows. That's interesting. So it's saying, and this sounds more like, and this would make sense because, when I hear it, I'm like, okay, I could think of ways that sounds right. They devour that which is holy, the sacred thing. I could take it away from that which is holy because it's sort of like, okay, they ate the soul and then they vow to make inquiry. It sounds like weird, like someone who's in charge. Like it sounds like a politician. They're in charge. The fox is guarding the hen house, right? And they eat the hens, and then they say, "We'll investigate later." That's what it sounds like. But is that what the proverb is really saying? And the NIV one, I see what they're saying here. When we compare with our text, instead of devouring, it could be devoting. Dedicates something to this holy, and afterward, is it really vow? Well, the word vow, I think the way they put the word vow in there, it's all messed up with the NIV, isn't it? So what's vow mean? I mean, we know what vow means, but what's it mean here? What's the word being used? After vow. Is it after? Akar, the hind, and it follows. Nader, a vow. Inquire, they seek. I can see the idea of like that they are sort of seeking. They hastily make a vow, and then afterward they want to get out of it. Okay, and that makes sense. That I'll tell you what. I'll take either thing as a proverbial truth and just consider both as true, even if we haven't uncovered exactly what this one means. On one hand, you have the King James rendering, which is an interesting kind of take on someone who has perhaps access, or they should, they're supposed to be guarding this holy thing or whatever, or they steal it or whatever, but somehow they're in a position to make inquiry afterwards. The fox, it's a clear case if you can't have the foxes guarding the hen house. And the other idea being people who hastily vow and afterwards they regret their vow and they want to get out of it. It takes me back to when I was 19, when I thought I was going to die because of drug overdose. And then I prayed to the Lord, and I promised that I would serve him if he would spare my life in that moment. And I immediately felt it wasn't like I wasn't like instantly sober or anything, but all this dark cloud that had descended, that I thought I was in bad shape. I thought I was dying physically. I felt like my heart was slowing down, and it could have been an illusion, of course, but it doesn't matter, because in the illusion I also was lifted, and my promise I took as serious. I vowed a vow. I dedicated myself. I sanctified myself to the Lord. And then to later on say like, well, hey, you know what? Have I ever regretted it? I won't say I've had regrets about it. Only not truly, but sort of what I would say is it was more than I bargained for. Okay, that's what it is. It's like a lot of times when you make a vow to the Lord or when you offer yourself to God, the deal is more than you bargained for. Even when people put their faith in Christ, they often don't realize, that they've undertaken to build a tower that they don't know the cost of quite yet, because it's like Christ will be built in you who have His faith. I mean, that if you have faith of God and you are going to be saved, then, get ready to take a ride, because that's not nothing. It's not just your life is going to be unchanged by it. It's ridiculous. And so oftentimes people afterwards, they question they question it, and the idea of questioning their vow. And I think that's what say. Afterwards they question their vow. Should I have, and you may question in your mind. That's okay, per se. Well, mostly, like I said, it wasn't so much that I regret following the Lord. No, He's blessed me very much. But in the course of following the Lord, like I said, it was more than I bargained for. There were regrettable things that occurred to me in the course of that. I don't think it's God's fault. It's mostly because I have to have sin cleaned up, so correction comes my way. That maybe if I wasn't a Christian, God wouldn't bother with. Okay, but that has its own peril. You might reconsider. But it's a snare. It's a snare. People who turn back into perdition, there's nothing there. For some people, they think, the grass is always greener on the other side. If I just abandon my faith, I get it. The thing is, none of us has that much to begin with. We have a measure of faith. It's given to every man the measure of faith. It may not be very much. What's the measure of faith? I want to make sure I got that right. I feel like that when I said that, I was like, am I quoting people or the scriptures? I just do measure. What is the measure of things? I don't want just Proverbs and Ecclesiastes. I just want the New Testament. I'm sorry, I'm just doing a search. Is dealt unto every man the measure of faith, right? To the measure of the stature of the fullness of Christ. I like that one. Did I just get that wrong? Why did I just do that? Let me bring it up so you can go along with me, so at least it won't be that boring. Here we go. Let's look for it. I was going too fast. Let's see. Well, it's got, there it is, Romans 12:3. Yeah, well, see? For I say, through the grace given unto me, to every man that is among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think soberly, according as God hath dealt to every man the measure of faith. And that's not to say every human being has faith. What it means is everyone in Christ has faith. Presumably, we all have faith, right? And we all have the measure of faith. I don't know if that means, I always thought of it as we're given a measure, like a certain amount. Everyone has a certain amount, like a differing amount. But it doesn't say differing amount there, and I probably got it wrong. Because what I'm saying is he's saying, hey, don't measure yourself as better than the other, because if you're going to measure yourself by anyone, everyone has the same measure, faith. That is the measure whereby we are actually measured. That is the measure whereby we are judged. That is the true measurement, is your faith. That is, if you're being judged on anything under Christ, it's your faith. And not, and it's not so much, like I said, I don't worry so much about getting every single doctrine right, though you should wonder. I don't worry so much about it, but I certainly don't count it as nothing. I want to get everything right, but I also understand, you have the humility to understand, like, I probably don't have every single doctrine right. And I'm probably not going to get every one of it right because, I'd have to pray and seek the Lord, and it might take some time that he'd be persuaded that I'm worthy of getting every doctrine right. It's like, oh, what, it's like, because like people say, you get perfect, you get proud. Well, I wouldn't want that to happen, so maybe he won't let me have all the doctrines until I work out my pride issues, so, okay. But it doesn't mean it's out of reach. It just means it's out of reach now. That's why I look at it. This is a process of attainment of gifts and stuff, but the true measure of a man is faith. Because we're all at different places I'm 50. I've been walking in faith for like 30 years. More than that now, right? Because I'm 50. I was 19 when I gave myself to, I was in faith before that, really. But that was when I gave myself to God's service. So that's a good measuring point. Faith for me is like, from the beginning, I always believed. So I don't have a point where I started believing. I just had points where I almost lost my faith or I almost died, and I decided to commit myself harder. That's about it. Because that's what it is like when you're raised Christian. My kids don't have like this, like, they just have it. Oh, that's our religion. We believe it. But then when they get to adults, they're like, wait a second, why do I believe this stuff? It's like, well, because you inherit it. Now you have to learn about it as an adult. When I was a child, I spake as a child and understood things as a child. I don't try to make children be little adults. That's absurd. Their faith is lovely. They, just teach them the right things and help them walk in it. That was very good, Much better behaved people than I was at that age, all of them. Those make me, if I could be made proud by my accomplishments, I would be. I would be. As far as I'd be proud as a father, But I don't allow that kind of stuff, that nonsense. Okay, so there's different ways of looking at that verse. A wise king scattereth the wicked and bringeth the wheel over them. Now, I noticed in the NIV, they went right to the threshing idea of the threshing floor. Because there's a whole thing where the process of threshing, you would maybe a wheel or something, you would roll over all the grain to batter it and to get the chaff and the wheat to separate the grains of wheat from also the the stalks and all the other bits of inedible stuff. And so they would roll a wheel over it, and then you use a fork and you lift it. Right? I've explained this in other Bible studies. A special kind of threshing fork lifts it into the air, and if there's wind, it'll carry away the chaff, and the wheat will fall to the ground. You just kind of flip it up, and this is a way of using gravity, and also, of course, the wind, which would be using friction, essentially friction, the wind particles kind of taking the light stuff and blowing the gravity, pulling things down as a sort of separation mechanism for your grain. And so the wheel. But the wheel also, I like it. Now, the idea of threshing is good, but it's not really something we have a lot of access to. But from that idea of taking grain in the harvest and then you thresh it, and then that's the process of separating the grain from the chaff, we have all kinds of metaphors of judgment. And that's why I think also when you come up with the ideas of the wheels of justice turning, and I even talk about the wheels of government, the wheels of, but this is all biblically, it comes way back to that same old metaphor of the threshing and the threshing wheel, which is interesting because those are the wheels of justice. Those are the things that separate wheat from chaff, good from useless, wicked from, I was going to say wicked from evil. Wicked from evil, good from better. There's good from better, but that's a more fine distinction, right? But anyways, but that is where you separate things. And it's a metaphor for judgment and justice to get it right. You know, you want all the chaff out and you want all the wheat in. You want all the wheat in your barn and you want all the tares to be burned. And it's a metaphor goes over and over. The harvest, the judgment, the separating. A wise king takes the wicked, he tosses them in the air, and he brings them, he scatters them on his floor, and then he runs the wheel over them, and that's the process of threshing. But also, now that's a metaphor, but what is it talking about? It's talking about justice. The justice is also like that. It is a process. And the problem, though, like I said, one of the things like that, you got to be careful you get that process right. Because you can grind up people, like in the parable, you gotta be at the right judgment, lest you get you pluck up the tares too early, you might root up some wheat with it. Because human judges and even angels aren't that good at distinguishing. Only God knows his counsel. Only God knows who the wicked really are. Because the truth is we're all wicked. We're all the wicked. We all deserve to have that wheel rolled over us and to discover just how much chaff we're made out of. Is there anything good in us? Is there any good fruit in us, really? Is there anything good in us that God hasn't put there that we don't already owe him for? I like that. The spirit of man is the candle of the Lord. What a beautiful idea. Searching all the inward parts of the belly. God breathed into man this breath of life. And man became a living soul. That verse from Genesis informs a lot of my understanding of what a soul, a spirit is. And there are many verses. And the Bible, while there is some, when you get into evil spirits and demons and such, and even things like ghosts, it gets a little sketchy. But when it comes to the makeup of man and what the spirit and the soul represent, I think there's some clear things we can say about it. Like man's spirit, I noticed by observation, it always says the spirit, like in Ecclesiastes, the spirit of man that goeth upwards. And Father, into your hands do I commend my spirit. But I do not think the spirit is the person complete. From what I can tell, when spirit and body unite, a living soul is created, and that is a person. Because before I was in a body, I have no knowledge of being any kind of living soul. I may have been a potential soul, like God could imagine me, and he could imagine actually an infinite number of people. He could imagine a twin that's like me, but like evil. He could have brought that guy into being instead. He could have brought a twin that's like me, but like even better, like a better version. Even better. Paul, you even better. Not humble much? No. Whatever, a better version of me. Someone who's, I like to think of myself as someone who reaches for good. So he'd have to be even better, okay? Right? I'm not going to be falsely humbled. I'm no good. I'm no good. I am no good. But I don't want to, that ain't going to stop me. Because Jesus is on my side. So it doesn't matter if I'm no good. He didn't have anybody any good to use. He never did. He always had to choose from losers. So there we go. That's why I'm a prime candidate. I'm highly qualified to be one of Jesus' top lieutenants. I'm a complete loser. I'm a complete. So it's funny. Anyways, not really. No. Well, without Christ, I would be. He's the one who's made me to win. He's the one who's given me. When I found a wife, God gave me that good wife. And God gave me those children. They belong to Him. Those are his children. I can tell. They seem like his children. They don't seem like the kind of children I'd have. You know? But the Spirit of the Lord is the spirit of man. Now, here's the other thing about that. It's like God's candle peering into you. Inward parts of the belly. Now, we had these belly verses, right? 2 here in a row. Real close. And wasn't there another belly one? Did I go over it quickly? I hope not. Because I was making note of those, at least mentally, partially. We had some other verse, maybe in another chapter about the belly. And I have this interesting, because we talk about the heart. There is you will love the Lord with your mind. And I understood there was like a head, like there was this. Everyone knows there is like a thinking here, and there's also an intention here. And down here is the belly. You know what's funny? Because people always made fun of this idea of thinking about having your guts and stuff like that, and these metaphors we use for like things we feel that are beyond just thought processes. Because sometimes we literally feel them and like, I just got a gut feeling like it's coming down here. It's not from up here. It's from down here. And you know, it's funny. I've heard it said, I hope I won't get in trouble for talking about things that may or may not be true. My gosh. You're like, whenever I talk about a rumor now or a speculation, I start getting this weird feeling like, oh, am I going to get censored? You know what? I wanted profanity towards those who would censor me. Okay? That's what I was about to say. Profanity. Or God bless you. I hope you come to your senses. Isn't that more the Christian way? Yeah, I think so. God bless you, wise up. You know, people got to be able to think aloud sometimes. All the time. You got to let them do it. No reason for the government to get involved. Absolutely zero. Wait. Oh, the belly. But I heard I forget if it was Dr. Berger. I don't want to put it on anyone's doorstep of who was saying this. But they were talking about how the stomach has all these nerve endings and the synapses. And they were saying it's like a second brain. Now, I'm not asserting that. But I'm saying, but the fact is there is major connection between your brain and your belly and all parts of your body. And there is much more like awareness in your body that goes beyond just your brain. Like the nerve endings are part of your brain. And it's been remarked that when people go to stop a car, like they've noted that the foot can move to the brake pedal faster than the brain can fire off a neuron to get the message there. Because the thought process is already taught down in your leg, and there's like an instantaneous awareness that goes beyond nervous system, perhaps. I don't know what to make of that information. Maybe it was just an anomaly. Who knows? Anyways, I heard said things about the mind and body. So the belly, though, even if it's just a metaphor, the guts, you got guts and also gut feelings. I was looking at one time at these different personality breakdowns of people, right? There's one called the Enneagram, which is spelled ENNE or something like that. ENNagram. All right. If you just start ENN and you looked it up, you'd find it. And there were different types of people based on, different, sort of people who are thinkers and feelers and things like that. And there were people who are instinct-based, and they liken that to gut. Instinct. Like, what are you inclined to do? What is your instinct? Your gut. What is your gut driving you to do? The belly. The belly is the part that is hungry. It looks after itself, right? The meat for the belly for meats. Whose God is their belly, right? So your belly is important in that it takes in the food. It sort of could be then also a metaphor. Everything you take in has to pass through it, right? And so, Jesus, when he says nothing going into a man can defile him, but it passes through and it goes out the dirt. Well, I've often wondered about that also with things like, I'm like, okay, well, what about things like tempting things, like sinful things that you see, and then you take them in sort of, how does that, go out the dirt? How can it, like if you expose yourself constantly to something that's bad, sinful, like pornography, is it just going in and out? Obviously not. In some way, some things, like poisons, right? Now, it says you can take that they will drink poisons and that will not be harmed. And I would say that, yes, you can encounter poison. You can encounter temptation. You can be exposed to it and have it go right through you. But if you Like it says, for it entereth not into his heart. When you continually do something, it's like it's entering into your heart. Because you didn't just see pornography. Like you walked into a store and you were confronted with a Playboy magazine on a rack for something, it was just there and you didn't expect that. You're just traveling and you walked, and then all of a sudden, a temptation occurs to you, right? Okay, that's reasonable. But if you buy it and look at it, now it's already gone into your heart in a metaphorical sense. So God also acts like that, I think, in regards to temptation. A lot of things we take in from the world, temptations and information and stuff, yes, they pass into our mind, but they are also processed in a sense by the part of our mind that I would characterize as the gut. And I suppose that's the instinct. Because your gut, I don't know, like the heart is one thing, but the gut can the gut cause you, for gut reasons, to lie? You know what I mean? Like, I just better lie here for safety. Like, it's not, or you know what I mean? Like, it's just a gut instinct survival type mechanism. Like, I don't know. I do know someone, when I looked at that Enneagram, who fit on that instinct side of the wheel. I'm like, that really explained a lot to me about that person, about their opinions about almost everything. It's not like their instinct from when they were a child. They're developed. They learn more. But when they respond to things, it's all instinct. There's no thought. They don't think. They don't feel about it. They just have an instinct about what the right answer is. And and they'll listen to reason. It's not like that. But what I'm saying is, like, they operate on instinct. And I don't know. I'm not gonna speak of myself because I'm not sure and it's boring. It's one, as far as like, I get bored when I start talking about me, man. That's just, I'm glad to have other people to talk about. It's very handy. But okay, inside of us, our spirit lightening our lives, bringing us to life, shows the Lord. Because why? Well, being alive allows us to act out everything. Having a spirit in us, it brings our brains to life. One, he knows our minds and all that, of course. It also allows him to look into us. But in a sense, by us following our instinct and following our hearts also, like all those things. The Lord searches the reins and the hearts also. It's not like I can't throw the heart in there and it's not true. Of course, though the Spirit of the Lord is the candle of the Lord, searching all the inward parts of the heart also, and of the mind and of the soul and of all those things. Dividing and something, but our enlivening spirit, being alive itself, is God's window into us. Because when we share, this is why I believe that the second death must be eternal, unconsciousness, because I do feel like them being conscious means God is aware of them forever and ever. And the idea of being in touch with their consciousness as they are consciously tormented forever and ever, do you think that God would enjoy that kind of eternity? I don't think, so no, it's separation. I don't think you can be separated from God and be alive, because that spirit of life, the spirit of man in you, is a candle of the Lord searching out you and that keeps track of you. It's how he knows you're alive, because you got a piece of something that belongs to him, which is life. I'm not saying when you have the Spirit of God in you, that's another kind of life spirit. But the spirit of man's life is from God and of God. But you know what I mean? But it's something he made for us. But it belongs to him. It goes back to him. And without it, we're not alive. I look at it as like clothes. Like my spirit, as I live with it, it shapes me and I shape it. Because I think I could be given a different spirit and I'd be a bit of a different person. If God had put a different spirit in me, into this body, a different man would appear. And he could put that same spirit, like two people, everyone who studies with me knows this, because the Bible says we are people are often of similar, or they'll say we were of the same spirit. I don't know if that's literally true, of course, like you could literally have identical twin spirits in different people, but I do think you could have that. And what it would be is you'd find people who just had a lot in common in the way they are as people, but also it was shaped differently by their experiences and by their body and their genetics, who they are. Because we're a mixture of all those things. Because I don't think life is just one thing. There's different spirits in everybody, animating everybody. It's not just a brain. We even know, we call people out. They have men of great spirit, men of lesser spirits, and all that stuff. The spirit of man. He gives us a spirit as it pleases him. Some people, like it said, it'll say like so-and-so was of an excellent spirit. You can have an excellent spirit combined with a wicked mind, and that's where you get your evil mastermind, I suppose. Satan, he's pretty excellent, man. He, top notch, that fellow, perfect in his ways, just like the king and prince of Tyrus. So the parts of, I think I don't know if I made a concise thought on that, but that's a lot of things to think about. Our spirit in us, our soul is us. The spirit is what God gives us to make us alive and to make us into souls. And when we die, the spirit goes away. And what happens to the soul? Does the soul sleep? Sleep is a metaphor. You don't know the soul. You're dead. You're dead. Lights out. The soul just winks. Does it go out of existence? No. A soul is not really something that goes in or out of existence. Like I said, in concept, I pre-existed. Like God could think like, well, I can make Paul, and he knew me before the foundation of the world. So in that sense, if God knows about me, then there's hope and light, and I exist in a certain way already. Now, I may not be conscious, just like Santa Claus exists, but he's not conscious. He doesn't have a conscious existence that I know of. Unless you're talking about the actual St. Nicholas, but I'm talking about Santa Claus, the one that's working and active in the world right now. Because he is working and active in the world right now, but he's not conscious like you or I, or that we know of, right? I don't believe in that, right? But I do believe that it's sort of like it's like this thing that it has its own existence. And it has its own life. But it is not alive in the sense Santa Claus is not living the way we want to be alive. He's living in the spirit, but he's not in a body. So he doesn't, you could literally put the spirit of Santa Claus into a person's body. Now I can't, you can't, but God could, and he could make a Santa Claus. He can make a Santa Claus. That'd be pretty awesome. I hope Santa Claus is in the kingdom of heaven. He can give that. That'd be an angel. You know what I mean? Like you'd be checking all the, here's Samael, and here's the other Iel, and here's Gabriel, and Michael, and Santa Claus. That's funny. That'd be cute. All right, so the spirit of man is the candle of the Lord, searching all the inward parts of the belly. The Lord searches us out by means of our own spirit. Your conscience will bear witness against you at the white throne judgment. And when the resurrection, the spirits will return to the bodies. And if the bodies are all decomposed, a new body will emerge where that spirit went. This is a miracle resurrection. Don't you worry about it. It's the same power that made the universe and sustains it to this very moment. So it's not a strange thing that he that formed man of the dust of the ground can reform every single man who ever was and send forth the exact spirit back to them, that the same soul may arise and then answer for those things which were done. The spirits are preserved. The souls, but without your spirit and soul united, I don't think you're conscious of yourself. There's just some spirit that was a leftover of you and the soul that's passed away. That's how I see it. And I think that's how the scripture, when you come down to it, I think that's the actual story of death. I believe in death. I believe in that it's this actual real thing that happens to people, not just like this mythological, like it's just a metaphor for a torture chamber that God has in store for everybody. I'm like, oh, really? And he loves you. He loves you a lot. And, he loves you so much he wants to save you from the torture chamber. He's prepared for all people like you. So it's not a torture chamber, Paul. It's just separation from God. Oh, so it's not that bad? No, it's even worse than a torture chamber. That's the response I always get. No, it's even worse. Okay. Mercy and truth preserve the king, and his throne is upholden by mercy. God loves mercy. And believe me, like I said, I think that if you look at that Revelation 20, you think about it. Like I said, I've looked into the meaning of basinismo. To extract information by torture, and that describes life pretty well. And I think it's a good metaphor for what the lake of fire accomplishes. The lake of fire is meant, like it says, if the wicked are punished, other men will fear. And the purpose of the lake of fire is to put sin out of existence, put sin out of business for the rest of infinity. Sin has this just tiny little window. It's actually smaller than that. It's got this tiny little window, and it has a purpose. Sin is allowed to exist in this tiny little window, in this insignificant little blue speck, as they call it. It's so funny, the atheists, insignificant blue speck. But, oh, God lets all this. He didn't let anything happen. He let a blue speck happen. What about all the suffering? The suffering? You mean the stuff that wouldn't have happened if he hadn't let it happen? Everyone's always like, oh, God, why'd you make the world this way? It's like, I could have made a different world that didn't include you. A perfect world wouldn't include any of us. Let me assure you that. If God made a perfect world, it would be inhabited by people that didn't include any of us. He's decided to make a perfect world in which he starts with people that aren't perfect. He likes a challenge, our Lord. That's the way I look at it. It's like he wants to raise up many sons to glory. It's more glorious to take sinners, just start off with perfect people. Come on. He's doing something bigger, better, more wonderful. Because God's amazing. He's like, I can take, he makes good things, and then he's like, okay, I can make man perfect. But let's make him perfect. Instead of starting him perfect, let's end him perfect. Like all good works, they don't usually start off perfect, right? Most works start off incomplete. And so he started us out incomplete, right? We got to be completed. The glory of young men is their strength. The beauty of old men is the gray head. Well, and here's the thing. That's all true, right? I mean, I certainly wouldn't dye my hair. I don't think I would. It'd be funny if I did, whatever. It wouldn't be that funny because I don't look that old yet, but it would be weird. I think it'd be weird if my hair was all dark like it was when I was young. I think I went gray as soon as we started getting married. It wasn't because I got married. I just right away. Just like some guys go bald in their 20s, I went gray in my 20s. Only with that streak, But I always was proud of it because in a sense I felt like the Lord was giving me gray hairs before my time. And now they fit my head as a 50-year-old. And and now at this age, of course, the respect I couldn't get when I was 20 because I was 20, I now get because I'm 50. Even though you don't deserve respect just because you are old, just because you have gray hairs. There's a lot of foolish old men. There's a lot of dirty old men, and it's not really pretty. So the gray head is not a universal sign of wisdom or experience. Sometimes, there's no fool like an old fool, all right? And that's the wisdom of age speaking to you, okay? Kids, don't want to be an obnoxious young person who thinks they know everything and doesn't respect old people, but also don't just be fooled by a gray head, okay? Young men, their glory is their strength. I'll tell you what, I love youth, and that's why I try to stay strong. That's why I want to stay strong. That's why I like to get out and move my muscles, and you need to do it. Like I said, they didn't have no couch potatoes in Jesus' day. And if they did, there'd be some talk about it in the New Testament. We can't be sitting around on our bottoms, eating our flesh and stuffing ourselves with unnutritious food. Let me just make, I get this nutrition thing because it's something that started to hit me as I discovered and understood that this obesity thing isn't like something, like we had this obesity epidemic, and I realized it's like, we're not just all like suddenly lazy and like, it's not, they had TVs in the 50s. It didn't, and then they were worried, right? And I know there was some obesity, and I guess maybe there's an algebraic, no, it's not algebraic, exponential increase at some point. Maybe it starts off slow and then it gets a exponential increase at the end. Like as far as maybe that's how obesity curves work when a society is like falling apart. I don't know. Maybe it's wrong, but I certainly feel like I struggle a lot. I lost a lot of weight, and I also like 30 pounds, right? But I think I discovered that a lot of it, there's a dietary aspect to it, and not just like the eating less food. It's the kind of food. Don't eat less garbage. Eat zero garbage. You know what I mean? Because instead of 2 bowls of Fruit Loops, I'll have 1. None of that has any nutrition in it. I mean, it has some nutrition in it, but it doesn't have all the broad spectrum of nutrients you need from different things. And it's not, a lot of the stuff is processed. too much, and it's not good for people. Yeah, eat as little processed garbage as you can. It's not to say, some people say there's no place. I don't care. Like I said, you can eat poison, but just don't eat too much because it's foolish. You can jump down from a height, but just make sure it's not too high. You know what I mean, right? I can jump a fence. I can leap over a 3-foot obstacle. I'm a man with strength and vigor left in me, right? But I can't do some things. Some things are just too much. And so we have our limits. We have to recognize them. The blueness, but like I said, it's like we will, if we don't take care of ourselves, we're going to be weak. I always thought I would serve the Lord in my older days. I knew in my youth I did not want to face the Antichrist. And I was right because I wasn't ready for it. I remember when I thought I was living in the end times, I was also kind of afraid. Of course, I tell you what, I'm always kind of afraid. I'm not fearful, but, I'm human. Lord Jesus himself did not, like I said, I don't think he cowered at going to the cross, but he certainly felt a bit of pressure, certainly. Under knowing what you have to go through, and take comfort in that the Lord himself allowed himself to feel the dread of the oncoming trial that he was gonna go through, whatever it was that possessed him in Gethsemane. As far as the feelings, they were perfectly acceptable. That's good to know. It's a wonderful scene that was given to us, so you could not, you don't have to be inhuman, right? But we need to be as strong as we can. I always wanted to serve when I was old, and that's going to mean staying in shape. Because if it isn't this decade, well, maybe it's the next or the one after that, and then, well, maybe I'll just pass away in peace. That would be fine with me. But I want to be ready right down to the wire of my life. Also, as an example to those that will come after me, the Lord Jesus may come soon after my death, for all I know. I'd like him to, but in any case, so I have to make sure that the generations to come after me will know that, and know what they ought to be doing, how to prepare. How do you prepare for something like Antichrist? It's like, well, we saw the pandemic. Learn to stand up for what's true. Speak the truth. Don't be someone who compromises it. Like I said, you don't necessarily go about as a talebearer speaking, oh, you want to know the truth? I got some truths for you. Again, that reminds me of all these people that read the Bible so wooden and literal. And it's ridiculous. I always quote from Proverbs, I think it's 28 or something. I don't know, where is it? I wrote it down earlier. I wrote it down today and I can't remember it. That shows you. 26:4 and 5. 26:4 says, answer not a fool according to his folly. And the next verse says, answer a fool according to his folly, which is a contradiction. Now there's context there that gives you reasons, right? But the point is, life presents you with contradictory things. Sometimes you got to zig, sometimes you got to zag. That's aside from following the Lord, which is always straight ahead, right? To and fro is not necessarily a good thing. But when it comes to dealing with fools, because the ways of man are changeable, sometimes you got to zig and zag just to keep out of their way. It's not about, right? You're just trying to avoid a fool in his folly, not get harmed yourself. Sometimes that requires you to speak up and tell him, hey, cut it out. And sometimes it's like, shh, let's get out of here. So that's, sometimes you don't bother because you don't want to get in trouble with their folly, and they'll get you into trouble. All right. Anyways, but the point is, there are often contradictions. There are things that are ideas that are against each other. And the Bible, like Jesus says, let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works. And then he says, in very close context, hey, be not as the hypocrites. When you do your alms, your good works, do not sound a trumpet before you. That's what the hypocrites do, that they may be seen. And Jesus just said, but wait, I thought you said you want them to see our good works. Yes, but they're doing it that they may be seen. See, it's a contradictory idea, but what's the nuance of it? It's like, well, what is your purpose? Are you sounding a trumpet? Are you making a lot of noise because you want to be seen by people? Or is it because You're genuinely letting the light shine that you have to show. And sometimes that's a question that, everyone can answer however they like, and you can lie if you like, but the Lord knows. The Lord tries the hearts. He knows what's going on in the belly. He can search it all out. You know why? Because you're alive. That's why I say, as long as you're alive, as long as you have spirit and breath, God has a window inside you. Can he look away? Yes. He doesn't have to see inside you. Like I said, he could close himself off from hell and not experience it. I don't think God is bound, but in a sense, but he could close himself off, but also in a sense, in some way, he would still be tethered because he would have to maintain them. He'd have to maintain the place of their containment and all this stuff. What is this outer darkness metaphor about? Outer darkness is a metaphor for nothingness. It's the darkness that's outside of consciousness, the darkness that's outside of life and light and the candle of the Lord lighting us up. It's God lighting us up and letting us see inside ourselves also. And it allows us to see who we are inside. We know, not entirely because the heart is deceitful, but the Spirit can search it by the candle of the Lord, yeah. The blueness of the wound cleanseth away evil. So do stripes, the inward parts of the belly. So, the blueness of a wound. Now, again, if you take that literally, it's going to sound like mumbo jumbo. This is why the Bible's full of nonsense. It says, it's just got so much like the spirit of man is the candle of the Lord. What? It's a candle, literally? That's so stupid. Because, again, they want to be simple-minded. They'll say the Bible's a book of fairy tales, and then they proceed to look at it and expect fairy tale-like continuity. Anyways, not continuity. Anyways, but mercy and truth I did that. The blueness of a wound cleanses away evil. So the stripes the inward part of the belly. So the blueness of a wound, yeah. The blueness of a bruise isn't like any, it doesn't, if you're talking about a spirit, it cleanses evil. It removes disease. That's not what it means, obviously. What it means is when you get punished for something, when it hurts, because, I took a slide last year down the stairs. I think I remember talking about it. If you go back to studies a little under a year ago, I was having a hard time sitting. I still can feel when I'm reaching and touch my bottom. I still feel a lump, a rather large lump. I slipped on the top step and I went boop, 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 all the way down on my bottom, all 250 pounds, and then that left me with a massive bruise on my bottom. Lasted for weeks, and it moved around, like they do. But why did I get bruised? Because it hurt. Well, not because it hurt, but because obviously the blow causes breaking of blood vessels and all. We know that if we took a little bit of a physiology type stuff, right? But it's the idea that pain in life has a way of driving evil out, especially if we make the connection. If we can make the connection between pain we're suffering and some sin in our life that's bringing evil upon us. Because that's the funny thing is evil, ra'ah, it's a very broad term. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It's like there's good and evil. Evil is not really a thing. It is when good goes away. It doesn't exist by itself. By itself, the void, is that evil? Just in and of itself, it's evil. Well, it's scary, right? The void is scary. If you thought of yourself going like a black hole, going into a void, those things terrify us to some degree, right? Black holes and ultimate voids of nothingness, or things we perceive as nothing. Obviously, a black hole is worse than nothing. It's like everything getting crammed into a place until it becomes nothing, which is kind of creepy. So it's not so much a commentary on how wounds work physiologically. It is saying that in the spirit, when you suffer some damage from your actions, the pain of that experience will help you reform yourself. Same thing with the stripes, the inward parts of the belly. Stripes for the backs of fools. We get punished for what we do when we get our just deserts. It cleanses away evil even down to the insides, which is good, because that's where God is trying to work with us. He's trying to make us inwardly righteous, not just outwardly. The circumcision is of the heart, not of the what's the foreskin of the heart, not of the outward. And so the stripes of the outward, maybe they have an outward pain manifestation. Again, these stripes can also be metaphorical. I've never been whipped, but like I said, falling down the stairs was almost like being whipped. I mean, it's like the physiologically. I didn't really have anything in particular at the time that I thought I was being punished. I thought it was just like, hey, well, sometimes things happen, But it does always give you the utmost peace when you could say, for sure, like, wow, like I could be like Job and say, like, I know there's nothing. I always need a few stripes, I think. I'm trying to reform myself all the time. So we read into the next chapter. We have a few minutes. Let's go on. King's heart is in the hand of the Lord. As the rivers of water, he turneth it whithersoever he will. Another one of these deterministic verses in Proverbs. Proverbs, very deterministic, very filled with cosmic justice and determinism. And like I said, we think to control ourselves. But even we see in Pharaoh, I mean, this is one of the prime examples Paul uses in Romans. He says to Pharaoh, "For this purpose have I raised you up, that I might make my power known, my power and my name known in you, that you may serve to make my name great." And that's not what Pharaoh really thought he was about. You know what I mean? And the thing is, though, this is so, but you gotta understand the Lord's will is, this does not mean that the king always does the right thing. When God's angry with the king, sometimes he puts hooks in his jaws to make him do things that he maybe shouldn't do if it was for his own good. And good for the people necessarily, if the people have displeased him. The Lord has their heart in his hand. And that's why, it's like, even though you got to be careful, when I look at like our country going astray, I mean, especially in foreign policy, that we're being foolish. And when I see our country acting the fool, I'm like, it's because God is not happy with us. That's it. Because our kings are stupid. They're leading us into trouble. I can see it. And it's because they've been made fools themselves. All the prophets and the rulers and the seers are filled with the spirit of stupefaction. They don't know what they're doing. And everything they think they're doing wrong. And everything that's in their way is like snares on every side. They have no hope. Like as far as like doing something that's going to benefit themselves and us. They're just digging graves for themselves and misery for our children. That's what our leaders are up to. They're digging graves for themselves and misery for our grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And probably our children, of course. That's what they're producing in Washington these days. And why? Well, the Lord is not pleased. The Lord is not pleased with us. He's given us such foolish leaders. Think about it. Now, again, it doesn't mean you shouldn't fight it. Point is, well, you look what you let happen. Not just me, everybody. And again, I could have done more. Could I have changed it? Probably not. But I would have been doing more. That's why I'm doing more now. Because it's like, well, I'm going to do what I can now. Now that I woke up. Got to do something about it. Because I don't think it's just like, oh, yeah, just study your Bible and stay out of the affairs of this life. It's not the affairs of this life I'm talking about. Because, the affairs of this life is one thing. That's like my house, my car, my marriage. When it comes to things like, you're not allowed to gather as a Christian group and worship God together. When people start saying stuff like that, that was what the pandemic was about, as far as I'm concerned. Forbidding people to worship, forbidding people to gather, while allowing it for the elites. Well, you know what I mean? While themselves totally defying that BS instruction. No, you plebs do that. Well, that's why I defied it. And it's like, if you're willing to do that, man, I got an Antichrist to show you. Wait till you see him. You know, if you thought the footmen were hard to run with, wait till you try running with the chariots and horses. I'm telling you. We got to be stronger than that. So, you know, I do not resist the power in the sense of like, I don't fight law and order, but I do speak the truth. And those who say that, oh, you can't, you know, no, that I don't buy. Oh, your words are violence. I got a new song coming out on January 14th. My Words Are Violence. The release date is finally set. I'll have a video on my other channel for that. I have 3 songs coming out in January. January 6th, we have Crush the Insurrection Trump. On January 7th, we have The Burden of Israel, Thou Shalt Not Commit Genocide. And on January 14th, we have My Words Are Violence. And hopefully there'll be videos for all those coming up soon. In fact, those are the next 3 videos I have planned. Anyways, music videos. If you haven't seen my channel, that's Paul Strangini. That's my channel. You can look me up by name. That's why I always use my name as the brand, because it makes it easy. Nobody have a unique name, you know. So, as rivers of waters are diverted, so God diverts the heart of the king to what he wants. They do his will. I find, just like when Caiaphas, and that results in things like Caiaphas the high priest saying, it is necessary that one man should die, that the nation not perish. And he totally doesn't mean, he means let's kill him so the Romans won't destroy us. But what he actually means, according to God, is Jesus is going to lay his life down so that the people of Israel, you know, so that in promise, according to the promises, that the nation would not perish, and he's going to be the Savior of Israel and the Savior of the world. And that all the nations will, you know, be blessed in Abraham's seed, as it is written. Couldn't see it. But, yeah, Caiaphas didn't mean to say all that. I mean, he didn't mean it, but God turned his heart. And when he said it, it was God who had put him up to it, even though he totally... See, man thinks one thing, but God directs his words. I think I used the example of Caiaphas when we talked about that. The king, you know, he does what he wants. He does his will. He does according to his will, but he doesn't understand his will is easily diverted to God's purposes. Like, he can have his will. Know, doesn't matter what his will is. You can just will whatever you want. It's fine. The Lord's going to use that or use it against you or whatever. Bend circumstances around them to make it go the way he wants it to go. They all serve his purposes. That's the end result. They do not get to defy him. They can pretend to defy him. I defy you. Go on, defy God. It's just futile. They shake their fist at heaven, and it's pointless. And heaven yawns, you know? They shake their fist at heaven, and heaven yawns. Because they can do nothing. There's just so much impotent rage, all these atheists angry about God and blah, blah, blah. You know, like I said, I have such peace in Christ and the knowledge of his reality and the resurrection of the dead, and that you can never take that away. And sorry, you'll never be able to make me feel that anger you feel deep inside and you really want to share with me. I can feel it boiling off of you. But you'll never get me to feel it. I just don't. I've been meditating on this too long. They get hung up on the first question. You know, that's the problem. Like, why is there evil? And then they get hung up on it. It's an itchy nose. It's not a booger. It's just itchy. Every way of a man is right in his own eyes, but the Lord pondereth the hearts. Interesting, right? Because this suggests that man thinks he's doing right. Right? I'm doing right. I'm doing right. I'll tell you what. I don't know. I don't know how much I buy that. I guess to some level, we can be ignorant and also, you know, we can think we're doing right, but also kind of know we're not doing right. Like it's hard for me to believe that, but I've done that. You know what I mean? Where I thought I was doing right, but my heart wasn't right. But I can't think of a lot of times, because to me that's like, that's getting down to me being pretty wicked. You know what I mean? Like, to like think you're doing right, like, or I mean to like say like, well, this seems right to me. You justify yourself. I justify what I do, but inside I know what I do is not right. Now, I felt the urge to do it because, like, there were times when I realized I'm clever enough to talk my wife into things that maybe aren't right. You know, like, I could try anyways, right? And then I could try to make it right in my own sight. You know, when I think of when I encounter this in my own life, and, you know, it seems weird to be struggling to find a time you'd committed a particular sin, but it's all right. When I was thinking about it, I was like, yeah, I remember one time, this was not even that long ago. I was like, it was a case of, for a moment, I thought one thing was true. And I stood up and I said, no, this is the way it is. Right? And I was pretty adamant. I was pretty annoyed. Right? But then it's kind of brought to me that, like, I don't think you're right. And I'm looking into my heart. I'm like, now it comes into an issue. There's a moment where I'm like thinking to myself, all right, I don't want to come down. I'm going to say, no, this was and this is. And that didn't happen. But did that happen? And see, so I don't want to come down from being kind of angry. Not exactly angry. It was more like from my position, which was irritated, let's say. From my position of sort of irritated imperiousness. And where I'm like irritated and I want things done my way. And I'm saying I had said this before, whatever. I don't remember the exact specifics that well. I just remember I was wrong. Right? And so that's the thing. It's like, I thought I was right. And then when it comes into my heart to doubt it because of new information, now I have a moment of temptation. I can either allow that doubt to make me come down and to humble myself and realize, like, well, you're not sure, so don't be like that when you're not sure. You better be damn sure if you're going to be imperious and and get up on your high horse and say, I'm laying the law down. I like to be quite sure of myself when I do that. Because there's a time to get up on your horse and say, I'm in charge. Because if you're a man, you got to do that. Even a mom has to take charge of the kids sometimes, even if it's more in the name of father that works better. My wife always said, your father wants you to eat. Your father wants you to that. Father, right, Dad? Right. It's like, I just keep up with, let her use me as that stick. But, sometimes you gotta get up on your horse, but also because there's a place that Jesus gets up on his horse and rides out and slays the wicked, all right? And we're gonna get up on a horse with him. I mean, there's a time for high things and a time to bring down judgment. Especially if you're a father, you have to do it. I mean, you can't just ignore judgment. That's another thing. It's like, I was gonna tell that person, like, and you say judge nobody for their sins. I'm like, dude, when you raise kids, you better forget all that garbage you just told me, because you have to judge things. You have to do judgment. You have to make justice happen. You have to do justice to them. When you punish, if it's a punishment, it's got to be just. Okay. We're going to start at verse 3 here. Obviously, just because I want to talk about it more and I like this stuff and everything that's coming up is good. So we'll pick it up at chapter 21 tomorrow. Thanks for joining me this day. Look forward to being back in tomorrow. Until then, remember the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. And that'll do. I closed my music. Let's just get a different something. How about this? Playing, maybe? Oh, it's totally quiet. Oh, there we go.
In darkness, we
Look for the wall.
like the blind, and we grope as if we had no eyes. We stumble at noonday as in the night. We are in desolate places as dead men. We roar all like bears and mortar like doves. We look for judgments, but there is none for salvation. But it is far off from us, for our transgressions are multiplied before thee. testify against us, for our transgressions are with us.